Good afternoon. My name is Emma Longwell, and today I will be talking to you about the importance of gun control. For as long as I can remember, the issue of gun control and gun laws have been in the forefront of the news. This is justified for many reasons. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, 12 children die every day from gun violence in America, and another 32 are shot and injured. I want you to pause for a second and think about all the times, whether that be recently or ever for that matter, that you heard about a mass shooting. Off the top of my head, I can think of Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde, and Oxford, just to name a few. Those aren't even including shootings that happened outside of school. Think about the emotions that you felt while hearing news like this. Helplessness, sadness, anger. Gun control is one of the many solutions to help make sure this doesn't become, nor continue to be our new norm. I've lived through an age where I participated in lockdown drills every month, grew up knowing what to do if I were caught in the midst of a mass shooting, and living in fear going out in public every day. This fear is transformed into anger and determination, inspiring me to conduct extensive research in order to do my best to make sure children of the future don't also have this as their reality. Gun control is essential in assuring that we address the danger and devastation that gun violence has caused. We owe it not only to ourselves, but to the next generations of children to do everything we can to make sure they are safe and do not have to live in fear. We will look specifically into the problem of gun violence and how it impacts our everyday lives, why and how this continues to be a prominent problem in our society, and how we can advocate for gun control and take initiative to solve this problem. Let's begin by talking about the problem of gun violence in depth. Shootings are becoming more and more common every day. This is evident in temporary and effective practices such as lockdown drills, widespread news coverage on mass shootings, and parents keeping their kids home from school because they're scared. Shootings are happening not only in schools, but in places that people go daily. The U.S. has had 2,032 school shootings since 1970, and these numbers are only increasing. Assistant Professor Sydney Trask had a lot to say in regard to this topic. She studies how context impacts behavior at Purdue University. We're totally primed to think of an active shooter situation now, Trask said. If you read about a mass shooting in the morning and go to a movie theater at night, you're a lot more likely to react with fear when you hear a loud noise that could be gunfire. Some would say that this is a natural reaction that has nothing to do with the knowledge of gun violence that takes place in this country. However, many people, including myself, associate loud noises with gunfire without thinking about it because of how often gun violence occurs. Gun violence also has extreme ramifications on the victims of gun violence. There are damaging psychological traumas that have a lasting and devastating impact on the victims. People involved in a mass shooting deal with trauma not only within themselves, but the trauma also impacts relationships among community members, including parents, the school, law enforcement, and local government, according to the Center for Violence Prevention. The National Center for PTSD estimates that 28% of people who've witnessed a mass shooting develop post-traumatic stress disorder, and about a third develop acute stress disorder. PTSD should not be a common disorder that is coming from an event that could be prevented. Now that we have seen the heartbreaking nature, scope, and effects of shootings and lack of gun control, let's look into why it happens and how it persists. Gun violence continues to occur because it's not being addressed properly. How many times have you seen and heard people in the news saying that they always thought the perpetrator was a bit off or an outcast, but nobody said anything about it? More often than not, there are a lot of warning signs that are overlooked not only by fellow students, but parents, teachers, and local officials. In a lot of cases, people choose not to report potential perpetrators when they saw warning signs. According to the Sandy Hook Promise, in 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had knowledge of the attacker's plan but failed to report it. In the case of the Stoneman Douglas shooting, the shooter posted warnings on his social media and also was not allowed to bring a backpack to school because of prior violent offenses. A lot of people say that there's no way to know someone's true intentions, but being vigilant and knowing warning signs and calls for help is a way to prevent tragedies like the one I previously mentioned. Gun violence continues to happen because people in power are not advocating for gun control nor making laws in favor of gun control, even though it's been found that states without strict firearm laws have higher firearm-related injury rates, higher firearm mortality rates, and significant potential years of life lost compared to strict firearm law states. For instance, in Mississippi, you don't need a permit to carry a concealed gun, not even on university campuses. And a few years ago, the state passed a law allowing K-12 school employees to bring guns onto school grounds. The fact that this was passed is sickening. There's no need for guns to be in the presence of children when all they are trying to do is learn. Therefore, it is so important to do everything we can to make sure that there are regulations put in place to limit the people who can gain access to guns. It is imperative that we advocate for gun control and take a stand for victims of gun violence. Think of all the things you can do to help stand up for what is right. Are you going to wait for another mass casualty to happen, or are you going to start now? Government officials should vote to pass on legislation that are in regard to stricter gun laws. Margaret Wong, the executive director of Amnesty International USA, claims that the U.S. government is prioritizing gun ownership over basic human rights. Despite the huge number of guns in circulation and the sheer number of people killed by guns each year, there is a shocking lack of federal regulations that could save thousands. This is extremely true in the sense that the government and some Americans are more worried about their own selfish wants of owning a gun over the people who are losing their lives over this simple issue. Many would say that guns are going to be obtained whether there are regulations put in place or not. I want you to think of these comparisons and consider your answers. If you have a child and you know they're going to learn bad words from other people, are you going to teach them first and allow them to say it? If your child is going to smoke cigarettes anyway, are you going to light it for them and hand it to them? Consider your answers to that. Obviously, our officials do not have our best interest at heart. That means you should get involved in your local community through petitions, campaigns, protests, and much more. According to Amnesty International, many young people in the USA now believe that stricter gun control can keep them safer. Make sure you vote for representatives that are in favor of gun control to make your voice heard. When voters in 4 Democratic-leaning states for the opportunity to enact expanded gun or ammunition background checks into law, the overwhelming support suggested by national surveys was nowhere to be found. This is why making your voice heard and getting out and voting is so imperative. It is important we re-elect or elect the representatives that are going to prioritize American lives over profits from organizations like the NRA. There's a lot that we can do to ensure that we are voicing our opinions about the importance of gun control. Shootings are becoming more prevalent in society as the days go on. The only way that we are able to change this is if we decide to take an active part in our community to try and prevent this from continuing to happen. Addressing, acknowledging, and understanding the issue of gun control is one of the ways we can be part of the solution to this problem. I'm pleading with you to take a stand with me for what is right. I know that you want to protect the children of the future. There are many specific ways to make a difference in regard to this topic. Urge your local, state, and federal government officials to vote and pass legislation that is in favor of gun regulation. Write directly to your representatives regarding the change that you want to see happen in this country. I am also imploring you to get involved in your local community by signing petitions, participating and donating to campaigns, and partaking in protests. The only way that we are going to fix this issue is if we work together. There's power in numbers. We must make an effort to get out and vote at each election for representatives that have our best interest at heart. Make sure you inform yourself about the values that your representatives follow and uphold. You can make a difference by getting out there and voting for what you find important. If it weren't for these useful and informative sources, I would have never been able to effectively bring light to this topic. I urge you to look into this topic more through these resources to even further your understanding and knowledge of the importance of this issue. Thank you.